Well, hello everyone. Happy Friday. So my name is Kevin Lancaster. I am the CEO of Channel Program, and we're the makers of Better Tracker. And I'm going to take you through a presentation that I gave not too long ago, last week in Dallas. Um, and let's see here, my audio. I've been told my audio. Okay, let's see. Can't hear me? Let me just share my screen here real quick. All right. All right, here we go. How about that for fumbling right at the start? Let's see. Just want to make sure you guys can hear me. Okay, all good. All right. Sorry about that. Try this again. All right. So this is a presentation that I did out in Dallas, Texas, about 2 weeks ago, or a week ago, and I'm going to run through this concept of a new MSP sales framework. And to be clear, this could be used with any product that you're working with in the stack, not just Better Tracker, but for reference point and points of uh, give you some examples. We'll talk through some of the Better Tracker talk. Before I do that, what I want to do is really jump in and start providing some value to you guys, some insights, some statistics that we see across thousands and thousands of technology stacks. But before we get to that, this framework, this discover, optimize, enforce, and scale, so DOES, again, should be used with, could be used with just about every product. And the idea is that you're capturing the audience's attention with real data, their data. You're building trust because you're helping them optimize their environment or their expenses. And then you're enforcing accountability, ensuring that you have adoption and accountability. You take a customer through those first three steps. The sale, right? The result, the outcome should be very natural. It should be actually less of a sale, more of a just a conversation, right? It should be really a mandatory buy at that point. So we've done this before with ID Agent and in our dark web monitoring platform. We had about 5,000 MSPs that we materially helped improve their sales outcomes. The idea behind that was you would show your compromised data out in the dark web, and MSP would be able to go back into their customer and say, "This is exactly why I've been telling you, and that you need security awareness training, and that you need multi-factor, that you need all these security tools that help secure that business." And I think that was a pretty significant catalyst back in the day to help MSPs, generate those sales conversations and convert. We're doing the same thing with this platform. So again, I'm going to start with some facts, give you some value here, what we're seeing in the data to begin with. So data set that we're working with, we've got 6,000 plus MSPs, about 30 billion data points. We've processed about 1 million transactions, 90,000 plus contracts added to our new AI OCR tool that makes importing contracts that much easier. It's amazing actually. And then they've added about 70,000 products into the platform. And so on top of that, we're at billions and billions and billions of dollars of transactional data that we're able to analyze, and then soon bring back to the MSP community and help them benchmark and really improve their overall business processes. So time for audience participation. I don't know if we have a poll or if you want to just throw it in the chat, but when we look at the data back in September of 2025, we could see that the average MSP had about 88.1 products. And it's funny, when you ask an MSP how many products you work with, they typically think about their core stack. And they're like, maybe 20, 25 different tech, products or vendors or what have you. But when you go beyond the core stack, you go into the marketing tools, into the operational tools, finance tools, payroll, platforms. The average MSP is working with, at that point, 88.1 products. And what's interesting about that, if you took a snapshot back in 2025, September 2025, you would have seen a number of AI either native, like a chat GPT, or an AI enabled product in the stack. And if you want to drop a note in the chat what your guess might be, 2.2 or 4.5 or 6.8, what percentage of the stack was made up of these tools. Give some folks some time to do that. Well, the answer was at that point 2.2, right? So two out of the 88.1 tools, applications, SaaS subscriptions that you were working with had AI built into it, or it was an AI native tool like ChatGPT, right? So that's back in September. Now we're in 2026, and you would have thought because of all the material improvements to platforms and AI-enabled tools that have come out, you thought that the MSP stack would consolidate, but that the actual truth is the exact opposite. The stacks aren't consolidating at this point. In fact, we can see you've added between 8 to 10 different new tools, AI-enabled or native tools. And so now you're up to 96.2 application tools across the technology stack. And so same thing, if we look at today, what percentage of the stack is actually AI native or AI enabled? All right, you got this 10.3, 16.3, or 21.8. The answer is 16.3. So 16 out of the 96.2 tools or applications are AI native or AI native. And that's obviously pretty significant, right? I mean, that's going from 2 to 16. So being the aggregate, the scale of these AI applications it's scaling pretty quick. And not to call them out, but the most common offenders, if you will, are by far and away the marketing organizations, followed secondly behind the development teams within inside of some of these organizations. So you're trying more applications. Now, whether you're sticking with them and holding them for the long term versus just trialing for a month or 2 or 3 months, that's a different story. But we can see clearly that the stack is expanding, which is probably the opposite of what you would expect when you think about the idea behind AI and consolidation. If you look across that stack, you look across all of these tools, we still have about 84% of the applications are traditional SaaS, right? That are not AI native or AI enabled, right? That's going to change as we move forward. And here's a really interesting scenario that you can run across your clients to help them really understand the perils and the sprawl of AI. So this is us having a secure conversation 12 months ago using Zoom or whatever platform, right? Your hope at that point, somebody was, taking notes and, taking notes of the conversation and to-dos or what have you. And so this is generally a pretty secure and common way to communicate with the team. You take that same conversation today, right? And just about everybody has an AI scribe now attached to their conferencing tool, and they're taking notes. Great, it's automated. It's going into that AI platform, that LLM or whatever you're using, and then you're taking notes. But then after that meeting, you're going to your marketing team or your sales team or your operations team and saying, all right, now we need to create a new campaign, a new marketing campaign. And so what happens is that you take that AI summary that's been sent to one LLM or AI tool and trained. You give that summary to your team, and your team goes out and puts it into a new campaign generation tool that's now training on your data. So this is the absolute definition of sprawl. And again, we spent years, monitoring the dark web and talking through data breaches and uncontrolled data breaches and the volume of data that's out there. And this is today's new dark web threat, right? And this is in most cases it's user generated, right? And there's not necessarily policy and security configurations, in place at this point. And we'll talk about, some of the things you can do ahead of time. But this, I think, highlights the perfect scenario that highlights really what's going on today in every single business that you guys work with. So again, we're seeing some really interesting discoveries with these applications. Again, we'll talk about some of the kind of success stories, and we'll use Better Tracker as the tool. But we've got, partners that are using this, and they're starting to see, yeah, they were shocked to see that they had 102 applications. I was shocked when we ran it internally first to see we had 107. And I probably was in that category where I'd say, maybe we had 30 or 40 or 50, in the high end. But so 102 different applications within our environment. And again, this is common. Everybody underestimates it. Everybody has thinks they understand what's going on in the business, whether it's shadow IT or shadow AI, and that's just not the case. It's just universally not the case, and we have the empirical evidence to demonstrate that. So again, I mentioned at this rate, as you look forward, and this is really the MSP stack specific, that percentage of your stack that's truly AI native, or sorry, truly traditional SaaS is going to drop to around 55% of your overall stack. And so you're seeing that fastest growing segment is the AI enabled, tools, right? You're seeing it integrated just about, every other, MSP vendors talking about, AI and the benefits of that through their platform. And then you'll see a strong growth on the AI native applications because there are every day there are new models coming out. There are new, small language models that are coming out that will be, I think, moving forward in vogue within this industry. As bad as it is for you guys, right? It's even worse for your SMB customers. Again, we can see this pretty definitively. And here's how it happens, right? Is that you're working with a customer and you might be running their Microsoft environment and you're enforcing some policy and you have several tools that are authenticated through Microsoft. And so you have visibility in that. You see that element of that stack. But the reality is that 50 to 70% of your customers' applications are not authenticated through some type of tool, whether it's Microsoft or some type of platform like a LastPass or CyberFox or what have you, right? Your customers are the epitome of sprawl and shadow IT. It's even worse when you get to the volume of AI applications that are just not tracked or that are fully shadow IT. Yet every business is trying to get an edge. Every business is trying to increase productivity and optimize their business, but that is shadow IT, and that's going to pose some significant risks downstream that I think everybody needs to be thinking about. And then on the transactional side of this, right, you don't have any visibility, and internally, most businesses aren't tracking this. They're not tracking, hey, we need a new Zoom license, or we need a new go to webinar license. Real life example here, not too long ago, where it's all right, just put it on the credit card, and then you know, when you start running Better Tracker and you see, wow, we've got, 6 different subscriptions to Zoom or GoToMeeting or whatever, GoToWebinar. Why is that? And that again is a scenario that plays out time and time again, day in and day out with thousands and thousands of customers every day. So it's bad for your customers. The challenging thing in this industry, right? And I can say this because I've had an MSP, a services company, and you know, everybody is still guilty of selling bundles and the latest, widget, the new tools, and everybody's rushing to the endpoint, end goal and trying to sell these new AI services. But they're doing that without first, you know, fundamentally changing behavior, right? So they're going out there and saying, let's implement Copilot, let's implement all these new AI, solutions, but they're not doing the blocking and tackling first. And I'll give you some examples of that. Again, going back to our model here, right? It's capture their attention with data, build trust, ensure adoption and accountability, and then make buying mandatory. And that's what we're going to kind of use this Better Tracker tool now to kind of show you that process, right? Again, this concept of showing them their data removes uncertainty and doubt, right? Now, in the dark web world, that was, there's a lot of, I didn't want to admit that I reused my password or I logged into this site or what have you. That's completely aside here. This is, uh, this is showing them actually what tools they use, right? This is the empirical evidence. This is the data that funny as us as MSPs, we see this when we're managing managing the environment, and some of the tools that we're using behind the scenes, but you never surface this in a meaningful way to your customers to help them understand how many applications and how many, users are using the applications and, where they can optimize, right? This is, call it QBR 101. Every MSP should be doing this with their customer, whether they use Better Tracker or not, right? This is just a fact, right? Their data removes uncertainty and doubt and makes the need to buy mandatory when you go through this process. So this kind of, I think further exemplifies, why this works. And this is the psychology of selling as well, right? People don't want to feel like they have to make a decision. People don't want to feel like they have to, buy this next tool. They buy when they're confident in their decision to make a purchase. And it's your job to demonstrate that data and help them become confident because you're basically helping them make a fact-based this decision. And that's ultimately what we're doing with this tool. We're presenting the facts. This is what you use. This is the sprawl, and this is where we can optimize and help you save money, right? And so let's think about this from the Better Tracker standpoint. We've got a integration into the Microsoft environment. What that does is that pulls back all the applications that have been authenticated. So you see that first step of sprawl, right? You think you know every application that your team is using, but you really don't because no one is looking at this in this way, right? So this has become the ultimate, discovery tool and conversation starter with your customers. So look, here's all the applications, and none of these applications are assigned to somebody directly responsible for that application internally. And they're certainly not assigned to a specific department. So you're starting with this mindset of creating structure an organization. Here are all the applications. Here's the department that uses it, and who's responsible for it. Because this happens again, day in and day out at every business. Somebody's bought a Canva license or they bought HubSpot. That person goes to the next great job, and you know we didn't really need Canva anymore. It's gotten forgotten about, and it gets auto renewed or what have you. Again, scenario that everybody can relate to because it happens thousands and thousands of times a day. All right, so first things first is do this assessment, bring in these applications and sit down with them and help them understand the totality of their sprawl, right? We've got some amazing, again, success stories of this where, MSPs and working internally or with their customers and figuring out, hey, we found another 22 uncategorized applications, right? That didn't know, we didn't even know existed. So this is again, commonplace. It happens more often than you would think. Next step is once you have their attention, right, and they understand the totality of the sprawl, the second dimension in any business, and I actually talk about this concept that there's two sources of truth in the business. One, it's you want to know what you use and who uses it. And two, you want to know what you're spending your money on. Right. Again, these are blind spots. And these are things like, if you go out there with a QuickBooks or Zero, those, accounting applications, those are rear view mirror snapshots of what happened in the business. And what we're doing is saying, look, you understand the totality of the sprawl, and then you need to work with your customer and help them, integrate with their bank account and credit card and see how much, they're actually spending on these applications, and that aha moment is amazingly powerful. And it's incredible to show that MSPs that are doing this with their customers, they're helping their customers save 51,000, almost $52,000, annualized by looking at the redundant subscriptions and applications. And so that is the next generation MSP, right? This is the starting point. Discovery and optimization, right? DO, discover what's out there and help them optimize their business. That is your job as an MSP 101. That's going to how you're going to differentiate. That's how you're going to start to grow internal revenue, expansion revenue, and net new customers. This is it right here. What's great is that we can look across the success stories of all the MSPs that are engaging in the platform, and you can see by category the impact that it's having either internally at the MSP or with their customers, right? So in 29% of the cases, these are tools that no longer used, right? It's a third of the technology stack. Overbilling by vendor, right? Or application sprawl. It's like that, aha, holy cow, I didn't realize how many we had. Or there are applications you forgot you're being billed for. There's about 12% are really leaning into it, and their first pass at this was optimizing because you can't run your business on a spreadsheet anymore. It's just it's 2026 people, like, cut it out, right? You need this level of insight and automation. And then the AI shadow discovery, 9% led with that in converting customers. And then I saw 6% that said, look, we already canceled this and we're still being billed. We know that's unfortunately, it happens from time to time within this industry. And, I don't preach to the choir, just go out on Reddit and then look at that. But, and then you have missed auto renewals and then redundant subscriptions. And so, look, these are impacting businesses, across the board, right? And this is why this concept of optimization, right, is this is the $20 billion, $30 billion opportunity for MSPs before you start to help your customers become an AI first company. First things first is you really got to help them optimize their business. I mentioned this before. MSPs that are using this application and doing this internally are saving on average $25,000. I mean, think about that impact to the bottom line. Think about that impact to EBITDA as you're starting to really think about the scale and where your MSP goes next. And then think about the massive opportunity to become a hero for your customers to help them normalize and cut out $51,000 of expense, right? And we'll talk about how you're cutting out that expense and then turning that into revenue here in a moment. But this is what every MSP should be doing internally. And this is what every MSP should be doing with their customers, right? In fact, this is MSP malpractice if you are not going beyond the staffing, helping them really optimize their business. All right. Again, more success stories. As an internal example, right? The well-connected office, Steve, and found $8,000 a month and $96,000 in applications, right, that they were still spending on. Again, I've said this time and time again, but this happens every day, all day long, just about every single business, right? And that's why we are absolutely hell-bent on helping businesses optimize moving forward because it's just, it's overlooked, right? Another example here. So Michael, I mean, $16,000 a month, which turned into almost $200,000 of savings internally. Like this is the impact, people. This is like we're all busy running our business, right? This is the impact and why this application is just, it's why we're getting this viralness in this industry right now. The mention about creating this accounting, this culture of accountability. Last couple of slides were all about discovery and optimization, right? Now, as you're helping them discover this, you're sitting down and you're creating that level of accountability. You guys are now on the same page as service provider and customer, right? So here's all the applications. Here are the individuals that are responsible for this tool, right? And here's what the department is using this tool. This is this is this is table stakes, and this is how every business should be running their technology stack moving forward, right? It should be an accountability based, uh, uh, you know, fundamental of every business, right? Because as I showed you back on that slide, as we project out the stack moving forward, this time next year, you're going to have 108 different applications because of the volume of new AI-enabled applications, right? At some point in the future, we see, elements of consolidation, but, sprawl is sprawl. And if it's happening to you, it's happening to your customers at even, a greater, rate. And so, again, shame on you if you're not enforcing this internally with every single one of your customers, right? The best part about this application, right, is you're creating also this concept of continuous monitoring, right, and alerting. New applications come in to the environment. You're getting alerted. You're staying on top of that. They're getting alerted, right? It's a team sport, right? And then that application comes in, and then you assign it. You create that level of accountability. Same thing on the expense. Many out there are familiar with applications like Rocket Money and Mint, Nerd Wallet, what have you. Same thing. When you have a contract that's uploaded into the platform, you want to know that um, you're going to be on top of it, right? You can absolutely be on top of these, new contracts when it renews, when this new subscription comes in. I mean, you're going to be absolutely on top of it. All right. What's great about this enforcement, if you have any regulated customers, and increasingly everybody's becoming subject to these new frameworks. These are again table stakes to these frameworks, whether it's GDPR, NIST, SOC, CMMC, HIPAA, SOC 2, right? You absolutely have to be doing this as part of these frameworks, right? You got to be assigning ownership. You have to have third party visibility. You need to be able to detect shadow IT. You need to document. You need contract tracking and renewal tracking, right? And generally you need cost and spend oversight. These are all fundamentals to these different frameworks. And so we've got some great enablement materials to help you talk through this stuff as well. So why we do it better, right? And I started off by saying, look, we help you engage with real customer data, right? So it's not going in and showing theoretical insights. It's not that you have to run a scan for 30 days, 60 days like you had to do in the past. This is instant. This is instant value for your customers. And you're showing them, pretty strong savings if you're doing it right. Turns, you know, not just this tool, but your monitoring, capability into a must-have, not just a nice to have. And as I mentioned, this works just with about this concept, this framework. It does works with many tools, just about every tool out there. But with our tool, it makes, just like we did with Dark Web ID, it makes the ability to cross sell and convert supernatural, right? Because you're showing them your data, right? It allows you to go in and manage sprawl, do AI audits, enforce a continuous monitoring, now start to work on AI policy and security, and then start to resell some of these other products that you're working with. Again, great success stories, testimonials, right? Where helped reassure a prospect. They won an enterprise car dealership. I don't know the exact amounts, but they allowed them to bundle this in, differentiate, and and uh, and win this deal. This is all about the scale. That last letter of DOES is scale, right? We recommend that you sit down with every customer and say, look, this is not a nice to have. This is a mandatory because sprawl is getting out of control. We don't have visibility in all the applications that you're using. So we need to sit down and do a technology and application sprawl audit. We recommend between $500 and $2,000 for that audit, right? Next, we need to layer in the transactional capability of the platform, so integrate with their bank account and credit card. Start uploading contracts and doing that level of audit, right? And you can demonstrate savings, which is great. And then that next is let's have an AI application audit and optimization session. So just between these three capabilities alone, they can be bundled as one. You can sell one or two or three. You're generating it, $1,000, $1,500 to $6,000 in initial project work, right? And you're setting the foundation for recurring revenue moving forward, right? I mentioned this now helps cross-selling all of these wonderful vendors. Uh, it makes it a no-brainer. It makes it mandatory. It makes it mandatory that they use password management. Getting into PAM and multi-factor. These are kind of table stakes. And then you got the new categories of ITDR and cloud monitoring, security, right? AI monitoring security is going to be obviously a pretty big application moving forward. So, so this is what you need to be doing with your customers. Empirical data, cross-selling, and making that close seamless, if not mandatory, right? I also mentioned, once you do that audit, you're starting to cross-sell. You're able to now put in continuous monitoring. So if it's the application alerting and compliance monitoring, we're seeing MSPs charging on the low end $99 for small customers, on up to $1,400, $1,500. I think we've got some at $2,000 a month that have a little bit larger customers, and they're enforcing that level of accountability, right? And then when they layer in the subscription and the renewal management and alerting, same thing on the low end, $99 a month, and the high end, seeing 1,400. I've actually seen one or two in that $25 to $3,000 a month range, because it's at that point, it's cost savings and optimization. So it's really, really powerful working with customers. And so what's great about it is, again, we're running the same playbook that we ran previously, is that, there's tools out there ad nauseum, right? And I always say, it's great to sell a tool, but it's even better to help your customers use the tool. And so that's what we do. We create un, untold amounts of enablement and support materials to help our partners, right? And so we want to make lead generation and your ability to sell and convert that much easier. So whether it's us jumping on sales meetings to help support you guys, training your team, taking them through this DOES process, doing webinars, that's what we're here to do. We're here to help you guys succeed because and every vendor that's listening to this, every vendor should have that mindset. If we help you succeed, we succeed. And that's what this industry has been built on. That's what we're all about. So there's templates, there's direct email campaigns, there's social media, there's landing pages, there's incentive campaigns. We've given you everything you need to do to make this super easy to scale and convert. So we have in here QR code to get started. think this leads to a free trial. So we want to definitely make sure that you guys get in here and try this application and really, please engage with our team, engage with myself, right? My email is pretty easy. It's just, Kevin at channelprogram.com or Kevin at bettertracker.com. We are here, I want to say 24/7, but we're here pretty darn close to help you guys roll this out and succeed. And we want to again really have a material impact in your ability to optimize your business, start to scale your business, start to help your customers optimize and scale their business, because that is what's going to separate MSPs moving forward. The tech stack has become, you know, uh, common, right? Across that entire tech stack, it's like 93, 92, 93% of those applications that you're using, your customer, your part, or your competitors are using, right? It's time to differentiate. So you got to be the first to market with this platform, and really embrace this new direction that the market's going in, right? It's all about AI optimization, it's stack optimization, it's expense optimization. That is the next gen MSP, and we want you to be ahead of the curve when it comes to this. So I think that's done. I think I've got a whole bunch of other success stories and testimonials in here. But look, I want to thank you guys for hopping on. We're gonna do this a couple times, just to get people to really understand the concepts that we're driving here, and then we're gonna do a ton of enablement webinars. And so be on the lookout for that. So again, we're totally committed to helping you guys really optimize your business, stay on top of it, and scale effectively. So hopefully you got some value out of this, from the statistics to the sales framework, and to really how this tool could help you change and really start to scale your business. And so with that, I'm going to stop the share and see if there's any questions. Hopefully I've covered everything here for you, but I want to thank you for joining. And as they say, we'll see you out there. Thank you very much.